So, continuing on the terrifying child abductions and terrifying abductions of the 1980s that changed America, hopefully for the better. This is John Gosch. John was on his paper route with his beloved dog in the early morning hours of September 5th, 1982, when the unthinkable happened. The 12-year-old boy was jumped by two identified men and thrown into the back of a car in West Des Moines, Iowa. The men quickly drove off with John in tow, leaving behind many questions and very few answers. Soon, John's paper route customers started calling his family home, complaining that they hadn't got their paper. His parents assumed he'd overslept, but when they checked his room, they saw that he was gone. They called the police, and cops started quizzing neighbors about what they'd seen. Authorities began piecing together the timeline based on early witness statements from the neighborhood, but nobody had a reliable report about what happened or of what the two men that abducted John looked like, and nobody got a good look at the car or its license plate. John's abduction proved to be a landmark case in many ways. For one, Des Moines cops waited 72 hours before beginning a full investigation into John's whereabouts. Most missing children of the era were runaways, and cops simply felt that John would end up returning pretty soon. His parents knew better, but they were powerless to stop the police procedures. After John's abduction, though, the policy changed nationwide, and John was the first child to have his face printed on the side of a milk carton. That practice would continue to happen for countless other children throughout the decade and onward to the new millennium. Curious events made the Gosch family terrified of the kidnapping too. First, about 6 months after the 12-year-old disappeared, a boy in the parking lot was overheard screaming that he was John Gosch and that he'd been kidnapped. Cops couldn't track the kid down to confirm his story, though. He was gone by the time the cops arrived. A year later, the Gosch family received a crumpled-up dollar bill in the mail. Scrawled across it were the words, "I am alive," and the signature that seemed to match that of the young preteen at the time. Then in 1997, John's mother, Noreen, claimed her son, who would have been nearly 30 years old by this time, showed up at her apartment. During late-night meeting, the man claiming to be John said he'd been kidnapped by a pedophile ring and abused. He somehow managed to escape, but had to stay hidden so that not to draw any attention to him. Nearly a decade later, in 2006, Noreen found several old photographs that had been left on a doorstep. They showed images of a tied-up boys being abused. She believed one of the children to be her son. That was never conclusively proven, but the continuous links back to John's kidnapping remain a mystery to this very day.